Well, I have been across the void. I have lost Murph. I can't seem to find him or Brendan anywhere. But I have found a new guest. Oh my gosh, it's Laugh. Do you prefer Laugh or Timo?
I don't really care, honestly. Whatever you're comfortable with, bro.
I think Laugh suits the cast more. It's brighter, it has a brighter disposition to it. But you are a freelance writer. Can you tell us a little bit about your tastes and where you come from? You know what I mean?
I'm a German boy, Northern Germany to be like very precise, and I fashion myself to be a sicko gamer, as in I only play weird shit according to certain people who were on this podcast before, and
You take pride in gross, awful, terrible games that I also enjoy sometimes.
in having an acquired taste, as we say.
I mean, an acquired taste is a developed taste. There's no shame in that. You know what I'm saying?
A wise man once said, for one to have trash taste, one needs to have no taste at all at first.
Actually, you would be the best person. This is completely spontaneous, but you're also like the biggest visual novel guy I know. Do you have any recommendations for me and the listeners out there for visual novels?
If you're coming in like really hot and never had any contact with that genre whatsoever, wait for Tsukihime's getting a release this year, which is like one of the biggest, like most important visual novels ever made from the guys who would later go on to make Fate, if that's like a term for you. Fate is like big franchise where historical figures get gender bent and fight each other. And by the way, Fate Stay Night is also getting a official English translation for the first time ever this year. Those are like two of the like things that you should play. These are very, very important pieces of media, I think, that the West never got introduced to. And then afterwards, the world is your oyster. You could go the road of being a degenerate and play all the like romance games and whatever, because they're good, you know. But obviously, Mufflov is another one which I highly recommend, just because it's good. It's just good. Good eats.
I mean, I personally I like strong characterization. Like I don't need a lot of choices or gameplay, but I need strong characterizations or things that keep me hooked. If a story is long for the sake of long and doesn't have anything to hook me, then you lose me. You know what I mean? So, I mean, I don't know. I'll definitely check out the Fate stuff because I know it's such a big cultural landmark. But oh well, speaking of big cultural landmarks, you've been playing the Metal Gear Solid Master Collection.
Exactly. I for some reason got a code like 2 months later, and I decided, hey, we're just gonna get pitch pieces about it. And yeah, I've been playing through. I finished Metal Gear One.
I've never heard of a code being sent out 2 months after a game.
Me neither. I was very surprised to find it in my inbox.
Konami is getting desperate.
Yeah,
They're just like fucking. Oh my gosh! But have you come across any new revelations? I mean, you've played the games before, but has the Master Collection changed your feelings in a profound way?
I think the older you get, and if you start replaying these games, it's just how timeless they are.
Sure.
In every single aspect, not just like the narratives and so on. I think the way Kojima and his team always wrote their pieces is just very in a cynical tone that still applies 20 years later. But also gameplay wise, these games still feel so uniquely their own thing, right? This like weird arcadey stealth feeling. It still works today. Like I started playing Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake, which is like, I mean, the PS1 game was basically
a really
just,
good game.
Yeah,
It's one of the best games. Yeah, and it's also like it's so funny when people talk about Metal Gear Solid, and Metal Gear Solid is an amazing game, but there's so much of it that is literally just the 3D version of Metal Gear 2. It's kind of funny.
It's so smart.
Especially for that era, it's like shocking. That was one of the big things that I worried about with the Master Collection, was because like the way they bundled it is like you have to buy the whole bundle for Metal Gears 1 and 2, and I was like, oh fuck, no. So like I just haven't bought it yet, but
If I remember correctly, they were part of
which
the solid.
they used to be part of the subsistence,
Yeah,
but I assumed when I looked at the Master Collection, they included them as a separate thing for the bundle. So I don't know if they removed it from Metal Gear Solid 3 or not. I have no idea.
check this right now. Give me a second.
Oh snap.
You can apparently buy them separately for $20.
Yeah. $20.
I mean, they are
Okay, no,
really
that's fine.
good video games.
They are really good. There's no debate about that, I guess. Look, all right. So which one out of the trilogy, 1, 2, or 3, which one do you really identify with the most?
You mean the solid games, the PlayStation?
Yes, of the solid games.
Oh, that's hard. That's really hard. I think, of course, Sons of Liberty is like one of the greatest things ever made in terms of like transcendent media and so on. And Snake Eater is just such a feast of a video game to play. It's like on a given day, it's one or the other. But if we just go from the game is just fun to play over and over again, it's probably Snake Eater.
3 is probably a better game. I think 2 is. There's just so much I like about 2. I talked with Brendan about this in his private server. To access his private server, dear listener, you got to donate to him on Patreon. Click, good promo. But anyways, was the thing that he really identified with Snake Eater was he liked the additional systems of like eating and healing, and then the environments. And admittedly, Big Shell in Metal Gear Solid 2 is not a great environment. But for me, what I really like about Metal Gear Solid 2 was it's like, I liked how it did its little set piece things, like listening for the president's pacemaker, or, you know, just little things like that. We're looking for Fat Man's bombs, and like all the bosses were very gimmicky in a very creative way. I just loved how Metal Gear Solid 2 did all of that stuff. And then obviously, like with the plot at large, I think that one is the most like pertinent to like our times. And then like I think 3 is a little safe, at least in story. Like 3 is like basically Rambo meets James Bond, and that's still really fucking good, and there's still like good thematic meat to the bones. But I don't know, man, like you're right, I just waver in between the two every once in a while.
Snake Eater's biggest trick is that it starts off and for the most part contains to be it's the crowd pleaser, right? It's the one that, yeah, it's the Metal Gear game everyone wanted, it's just pure action, and then at the end it just comes from the back of the chair and just hits you over the head, Ryan, with that ending. And suddenly we're back to this like typical Metal Gear, just cynicism. It's so depressing towards the end.
Well, but even with that cynicism, I think no matter what throughout Metal Gear Solid 3, even at the end, there's heart to it. There's heavy emotions. And I think Metal Gear Solid 2, for its plot, it definitely views literally everything with distance. Like, you know, how much of this was real? How much of this, like, how many of these interactions are, you know what I mean? Like, especially, like, before Metal Gear Solid 4, I was like, are Jack and Rose like action? Like, you know what I mean? Like, there were so many moments where you doubted the emotional authenticity, and obviously that was part of the point of the game. But you're right in that the crowd pleaser thing was able to just baseline appeal to everyone's emotions, and did it really well.
I mean, don't we all just long for a maternal figure who can kick our ass?
I long for just deep throating a giant anaconda.
You know what? Fair. Fair.
I played Mario versus Donkey Kong.
The new one?
What? Yeah, the new one. Well, technically the new one's a remake.
Oh, yeah. I think I played that back in the day on the Game Boy Advance, wasn't it?
Yes, it was originally on the Game Boy Advance. Now, for those who don't know, dear listeners, secretly, one of my favorite games ever is Donkey Kong 94 for the Game Boy. It is one of the best games because Mario moves so cool, and it's got like a really great, just like, you know, every single level has so much variety, and it like there's puzzly elements and great platforming elements. And technically speaking, Mario versus Donkey Kong for the original Game Boy Advance was like a semi-sequel. At the very least, it continued the same design philosophies of like a very mobile Mario, and like the sort of screen by screen, like little puzzle box platforming segments that had so much variety to them. I think one of my big problems with the initial release and this game also is it feels very generic. The art style, man, the fucking new Super Mario Bros. Era really did a number on Mario, because anytime I see generic Mario or like the way they like just the baseline designs, I like roll my eyes and I think the game is ugly. So in some ways, I think Mario versus Donkey Kong for the Switch is an ugly game. That being said, the base game is still insanely fun. I love how Mario moves, and they have added new screens and new levels, which is really nice because quantity and variety matters so much in these titles. So I like welcome it with open arms. You know what I'm saying?
I am blown on how they put 3D graphics on the Game Boy back in the day, even though I know it's just sprites, but it looked so good back then. And I think
that was your Donkey Kong Country moment.
Yeah, exactly. And I think now this like magic is probably gonna get lost on a lot of people, especially with like it's on Switch, right? And though I remember that game fondly. I haven't played the new one yet, so I'm probably gonna check that out whenever I get around it. But I don't see that happening anytime
I do think what you say is interesting, because I'm not sure how many people would like this game. I have no idea how many people want this kind of Mario. I think this kind of Mario died a long time ago, so it's very interesting, like 20 years later, like, oh, this Mario exists again. How did people feel about it? Because like the later games in the franchise were minis games. They were basically like Lemmings-esque games. So like they went for like a semi different genre in the same ballpark. And I mean, I understand why, because there's only so much you can do with it, but like I don't know. It's just interesting to me. Playing it like made me just like think more about it when I put it down. Like what people think about it, and just like it left me like with a weird feeling after,
I think maybe that's just a me thing, but whenever Mario's just, oh, we're doing the jump and run and so on, I get bored of it pretty quickly. I think the whole franchise is stronger when you look at the side dishes. We have the Princess Peach game coming up later this month, correct? And that looks cool with a transformation. It's more action focused. Luigi's Mansion is fantastic. I enjoy all the like little spin-off games, your Mario RPGs, which got a remake recently, your Paper Mario's and so on.
Paper Mario 1,000-Year-Old Door is getting a remake.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
And I think
like the spin-offs are really good, and like Mario has such a great supporting cast to allow for that.
Meanwhile, Mario Wonder, I sleep. After Mario Maker and Mario Maker 2, where's the left to go, man? Like,
did you play Wonder?
I did play it briefly, but I kind of felt myself bored, because I think with these like 2D platformers, they personally peaked for me with the Rayman Legends and Origins games, right? If you remember those.
Yeah, that's fair.
That was just
I would recommend playing Wonder, like giving it a real chance. It's not particularly crazy, but I like how they've done it. I do think that there is an evolution, like post Mario Maker with it. That being said, is it better than Rayman Legends? Probably not. But I don't know. I definitely saw the future once it was forged. But also, a Mario platformer in 2023 is not the same sort of vibe.
Oh, if
you know what I mean?
Wonder had shipped with a level editor, I'd be interested.
Do you like is the level editor something that really directly appeals to you for that? Like I don't know what you get out of it, like the challenge mode stuff or what?
A lot of it is just like I think the creativity people get out of it, because there's one thing is video game makers making levels that get play tested over and over again, right? So they're just challenging enough. But I'm looking for these like the free thinkers, these levels that are either weird roleplay gimmicky stealth missions, or these like extremely hardcore precision challenges that you just don't get in the regular games.
The way you say, I would definitely recommend Mario Wonder to you, because the gimmick of Mario Wonder is that there's like a base level which is I'm just going to say it. It's baby easy. It's the fucking piss easy. A baby could do it. And then there's optional segments that are either directly creative. Like there's definitely stealth segments. There's literal stealth segments in Mario Wonder, or very creative. There's just creative moments. I think creativity is there, but Nintendo's, and I guess this is an example that we just said, is that Nintendo's afraid to do that in the main stuff. So in the main level, you will not feel that. You have to look for the creativity, and the creativity is in the side content. And the side, you know what I'm saying? So like in that, I still would definitely recommend it to you.
Probably gonna give it a try once you can buy it on sale, but it's a Nintendo game, so that will never happen. Maybe once the Switch 2 comes out.
You could have pirated it on Yuzu if, you had access to Yuzu at some point. Oh, well.
Yeah, man, would have been...
I actually don't know how it emulates on Yuzu. I assume it runs okay.
Someone probably already made like a widescreen patch and you can play it at like 500 FPS on your RTX meme card.
That sounds so sick. Anyways, I also played Star Wars Dark Forces. Speaking about playing a game on my PC with my RTX enabled. I'm just kidding. Have you ever played this game?
Actually did. I played all of them. All the Kyle Katarn games, right?
Oh my gosh. Now, admittedly, like one day doing Jedi Knight, Dark Forces 2, oh, I would totally make that a Daydreamcast episode. Kyle Katarn is fucking dope. Oh my gosh.
He's the self-insert, overpowered character of the old Star Wars days. Everyone everyone accused Daisy Ripley to be in the new Star Wars movie, there was Kyle Katarn back then, but he was cool.
Okay, here's the thing. I mean, I don't know how much of a Star Wars fan you are. This is my hot take. I have a hot take here. I think most of Star Wars Legends was all fan fulfillment. Not just Kyle Katarn, but I think Star Wars Legends Luke Skywalker is also just like everybody giving him a hand job and saying how great he is. And like, I like Luke Skywalker, do not get me wrong. And I like Kyle Katarn, but like that's what I think Legends like largely was about. I think Kyle Katarn can get away with it because as a player character, it kind of suits the gameplay, and it's because of how flexible he is. Because in Dark Forces, he's not a Jedi. They just made him a Jedi because you wanted to do cool Jedi shit in the sequels. So in this one, I mean, it's like a Doom clone. You can jump, which is nice. What's really weird is that I think the HD retextures or whatever they did, they look really good. I compared the DOSBox like straight version to this, and it is like miles and above a difference. However, this game is like, I think $30, and that's a lot for this fucking package. And part of that's obviously like, oh, it's a licensed game, it's Star Wars, you need to fucking charge money for this. This can't be like a Quake thing where it just comes in free. But like, yikes, I don't know if I could recommend paying a lot of money for this game.
No, I would be a bit more cross on that if it wasn't it is Night Dive Studio who made it, right? And after that, pretty good System Shock remake they did.
I love the System Shock 1 remake. Mm-hmm. They did a great job with that. They're a good studio for sure.
Yeah, and if I have to pay $30 for them to potentially make Jedi Knight and, Jedi Knight 2, I'm happy to do that, honestly. I would love to see it.
Oh, there you go. Yo, dude, are you going to play the Battlefront re-releases?
I'm not sure, honestly. It is the game was a huge part of my childhood. We used to in this very room I'm currently sitting in, which is now my office, we used to sit here all night on the PlayStation 2, and we had our friends come over, and 4 of us would pass 2 controllers between each other, so we play bot matches, or we would play all night the Galactic Conquest mode against each other.
And that's so sick. I love Galactic Conquest.
Dude, playing this against your best friend all night is a fantastic experience, honestly.
I played a little bit of online Battlefront 2, not recently, a couple years ago. Mm. It was good. I mean, I don't know what this package is going to bring, but I'm kind of excited. I think I'm going to get Battlefront. I need to squad up, though. I need to find people. So, open call to anybody listening. If you want to play Battlefront, fucking hit me up on the hot phone. I will get in.
You know what? I might be on that.
I do think it's weird that the Battlefront re-release includes. I think they include fan-made mods. I've never liked that. Because I highly doubt they ever get compensated. Like, I remember the Baldur's Gate 2 re-releases include fan-made mods in them. They just package it. Like, that's a very common thing now for these types of games. And like, it kind of doesn't sit right with me.
I mean, sometimes just like, oh, it's changes that make sense. Or it's like, oh yeah, they polished off like older content, like maps that were unfinished or something like that. And then it's kind of like, it blurs the line between what is like, I guess, socially acceptable and what isn't. But
I mean, I wouldn't mind like including mods in your remaster or remake as long as the people get proper credit and compensated for their contribution, which I would bet money never happens.
Didn't CD Projekt Red do that for the Witcher 3 re-release?
Maybe they did. I would believe CD Projekt Red would do that. But that's because they're cool.
Sometimes they're cool. I don't know. I haven't forgiven them for the whole Cyberpunk thing.
I mean, Cyberpunk got better though.
Yeah, but it didn't get good.
It was never great, but it got better.
It got better, yeah. And they have GOG, so that's still good boy points in my book.
They're as of now if there was a laugh bar, they would be neutral positive still.
Yeah.
I gotcha. Yeah. All right. Speaking of neutral positive, I played Slave Zero X.
That's a Mega Man game, right?
No. Slave Zero X is technically, I would say the closest thing would be like a Strider. Have you ever played Strider?
I actually haven't, no. Please tell me, Brogan. Please do.
Let me try to like convey what this game is then. So it's 2D sprites in a 3D environment, but it's a 2D plane. You sort of just like move around and weave around. It's very like Strider 2. If you played Strider 2, the vibe is very similar, and you do a bunch of melee attacks. However, the big gimmick to this game is that it's basically a brawler. You're sort of mashing the sword button and just attacking them and all that. You know, you got your light and your heavy, but it also has fighting game mechanics. So it has a parry. It has a forward third strike parry. It has a burst from Guilty Gear. It has a bunch of elements from these fighting games to sort of raise the complexity of the beat 'em up. And like, obviously when we get into the game of the week, like, taking from those elements definitely helps elevate it. But also the problem for me with Slave Zero X is the same fundamental problem with 2D beat 'em ups. For a lot of them is the answer to late game difficulty is to throw in a bunch of enemies that can tank your hits and beat the shit out of you where you're stun locked and you just like your health bar gets deleted.
Yeah.
I'm
surprised they still make these 2D fighting 2D like brawlers, that you still make these. I thought they're all like kind of, I mean, River City Girls came out recently, which was like pretty alright, I guess.
Yeah, River City Girls had a sequel, River City Girls 2. And then they also had Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And I mean, the Streets of I'm dying now. Streets of Rage remake, or the Streets of Rage sequel, was also really, really good. There's still good 2D brawlers, and I will say the Strider strand of DNA is very unique. And so this is a unique game to appreciate. I think the story is cool. I think you would like watching like a YouTube Let's Play of it. Laugh. So you'd be like, oh, okay, that looks cool. But I don't necessarily know about playing it more than 2 or 3 hours.
I'm looking at some clips at the moment, and just like the way they use 3D maps with 2D sprites just looks cool. Holy shit. He turned a corner in 2D. You can't do that. That's illegal.
You should absolutely. I'm serious, Laugh. You should play Strider 2. Strider 2 is fucking sick. It is such a good game. Anyways, Slave Zero X is a solid game. If you're interested in it, I would definitely recommend looking into it. More importantly, you have played Final Fantasy VII Rebirth.
Yes.
I need you to tell me if this is a good game or not.
That depends on your love for Final Fantasy VII, I think.
You're not selling me.
See, as someone who's a little bit younger than probably a lot of people who listen to this, I was born in the years that Final Fantasy VII came out, right?
What? How old are you?
I'm 26.
Oof.
Yeah, exactly.
Oof. Continue.
So Final Fantasy VII has always been like a big presence. Like my entire life, it was like around me. When I got into games, like the whole compilation was kind of a thing. I played. I think the first Final Fantasy VII title I played was probably Crisis Core, and then Dirge of Cerberus, and I watched the Advent Children movie that everyone hates, but I think that thing fucking rules. I don't care what everyone says. It rules.
Advent Children is kind of good if you turn your brain off and just pretend it is a video game cutscene for an hour and a half.
Yeah, but that's most of Final Fantasy,
to be fair,
isn't it?
we just talked about Metal Gear Solid, so it's not that.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, and as someone who's like always been like, especially into like the whole compilation thing, and I read all the Final Fantasy VII books. I listened to all the audio dramas and all the extended media and so on. And then you go into like, if you played the remake already, it's like they teased a little bit here and there of like, oh, we're gonna involve this bit, and there's this character from the book no one read. And that was cool. But then in Rebirth, it's like, yeah, this is the world of Final Fantasy VII that we've been expanding upon for the last like almost 30 years. And that's fascinating. I kept talking about to a friend of mine, like, how different it was in the original game when you first go to Junon, this like city with the giant cannon, right? And it's just on the world map, and it's like the city itself is as big as Cloud on the world map and on the PlayStation 1 game. And if you go there in Rebirth, it's gigantic. You can barely even see it. That alone just overwhelms me. And then these characters, the way they've written them, they have so much depth now. They're so much fuller people, also in their relationships with each other. Because let's be real, in the original, Cloud was the only real character. Then there was a bit of Aerith, and then Sephiroth, and the rest was just side stuff, really. Tifa had a few lines, but that
I mean, like, I guess this was the thing that I asked about with Brendan was, okay, so these are my thoughts on Final Fantasy VII. I think it's a good story. I think it's a nice epic tale. I like the Cloud personal drama. Obviously, like the Cloud Sephiroth dynamic is really cool. And I mean, I think you're not giving like Tifa enough credit. I think Tifa is like a big supporting character. But that being said, the party members are weak in Final Fantasy VII, particularly because the way I said it to Brendan, and he agreed, was, in the last podcast, you could check it out, was the only real big things that differentiated them was your what was it, materia build and their giga limit or whatever.
Yeah.
Like those were the primary things that differentiated them. And in terms of characterizations, yeah, there were character elements to them, but they didn't necessarily feel fully realized. Now, the way I'm hearing it now is that this is a fully realized game, and also as a remake, as you said, contextualizes all of the external media, because now in a post Final Fantasy VII world, the 7 franchise has gotten so much depth in external media that they are able to fill things out.
Yeah, but I also wouldn't even call it a remake, or it's also not, I guess it's not a sequel either like people say it is, because it feels more like a re-examination of what Final Fantasy VII is as a whole and what it all meant. And I keep people saying, oh yeah, it's bad because it's different, or they changed the meaning of it and so on and so forth. And I think if you remake something, a big part of it is re-examining what you've made, right? And Final Fantasy VII has the remake project has the, I guess the luck that a lot of the people who made the original are still working at Square Enix and are making this remake now, right? And
Yeah.
if you look at this work, which basically like defined an entire era of gaming, right? And to this day, Final Fantasy VII is one of the most important video games we have in this medium. It is interesting to see them re-examine the thing they made and the parts that they expand on now. Is, you know, a normal person wouldn't put this like little screen thing that was just in the original. It was like a minute or so you pass by. A normal person wouldn't make out of that like a 30 minute segment of where you just hang out with the crew. But I appreciate that because that means you cared. You cared to put this in, you cared to examine this, you cared to put in more flavor. And sure, if you love the original, you might not like it, but this remake is not just for you, it's also for them.
Yeah. I think that's a very interesting way to say it. Let me ask you, there's going to be a third one of these. How do you feel like the third one is going to go? Obviously, you haven't finished this, right? That should be said. But do you feel like, for instance, that the third segment is going to be less open worldy, for instance? Do you feel like there's going to be major subversions where it becomes more like a sequel again than the remake? Or do you feel like this game that you're playing right now is the direction 3 is also going to go?
I think Rebirth was the big open world adventure game because that was also the section in the original, right? And I think the third part is going to be like a 20 to 30 hour just action movie. It's just gonna go through all the parts and really full action the entire time. And I don't know, maybe it's gonna subvert some stuff. Maybe Advanced Children is finally getting some real love. Maybe it's going to be the epilogue. I don't know. But I'm confident whatever they make is going to be worth it. Like the whole wait for it, for the remake.
Okay. Any more thoughts on Final Fantasy VII Rebirth?
I think, and I believe Tim Rogers said that when the first remake came out, is that, you know, the Final Fantasy VII remake has the potential to either save the world and destroy the world, or destroy the world, right? And I don't know what the outcome is, but I'm here for it.
There you go. That is terrifying for me. But on that prospect, let's go to the Variety Minute.
Yeah.
This week's Variety Minute is basically we just changed everything around because we found out that Toriyama, the creator of Dragon Ball, has passed away recently. So we decided to sort of dedicate a segment here. And obviously we can talk about Dragon Ball. I think that is important to do. But I would also really want to talk about his contributions to, say, Dragon Quest. You know what I'm saying? Like Dragon Quest and even fucking Blue Dragon. Like he had such a profound impact not only on Japanese designs but gaming as a whole, and fucking Chrono Trigger. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think it cannot be understated how important Akira Toriyama was to everything that came out after Dragon Ball, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned it, Dragon Quest. His designs, the like cutesy little fantasy adventure, and how that stood into contrast of like what fantasy RPGs were back then in like the late 80s and early 90s. You know, you had your Dungeons and Dragons, the scary dragons and so on. Now there's a Dragon Quest with like cute little monsters and the slime, and the hero looks like Goku.
Yep.
And that's
and there's still levels of seriousness, but the designs themselves evoke so much character beyond typical sword and sorcery designs. You know what I'm saying? And then we go to like Chrono Trigger. Chrono Trigger is really nice for me because of like Robo, right? Where he's able to showcase a lot of the mechanical designs, because Toriyama's not only great at characters, but he's good at robots and vehicles and all that kind of shit too.
the man loved his like spheres and cylinders. Everything had this like weird roundish design, and I don't know. It's fantastic. I love it. I think nothing. I can't pick apart a lot of like artists from like the way they draw backgrounds, but Toriyama you can. It's just like the way, everything looks kind of soft and cute, but still has this like very fantastic and sometimes sci-fi element to it. Looks outlandish but
Yep.
familiar, and in a way that is very him. And I don't think there's anyone even close to his like style, just from like architecture and something like that. There's no one who drew like him, and still to this day there's no one who does that, despite like everyone being inspired by him these days.
Yep. And there's so much like there in terms of like anatomy and muscle definition versus action and choreography. Here's Murph wrote something, even though Murph could not be here today for the Toriyama segment. He wrote this, and we could dissect what he says here because he says some takes that I agree with and disagree with at the same time. He says, I think there are very few artists in the world responsible for changing the visual language of their medium. Characters with wild power-ups and techniques weren't new to the world of manga. For instance, JoJo's was already on part 3 by the time Dragon Ball had its first chapter, but nothing hit like a Super Saiyan or a Kamehameha. I don't know if I can diagnose the reasons for Toriyama's success. Dragon Ball and Z don't sound peak on paper. At the very least, it doesn't seem like something that could be pitched today that would get made at all. The Boo arc is kind of mid or to bad, but it says something that I know everything in the Boo arc and can still get hyped in moments of the Boo arc recreated in video games or whatever. I can't say the same for anything that tried to do Dragon Ball without Toriyama, like GT. Maybe there's some lightning in a bottle that he was able to tap into. He knew how to make silly things cool and cool things silly. Nothing more to say than move well, study well, play well, eat well, rest well. That is the Turtle Master way, which I agree with at the very end.
I think you pointed at something there at the end, which I think makes Dragon Ball so special, and the like shifted, created, and shown in manga, and I guess in every other media influence offers the process of getting stronger, right? Another before that, and you still see it today, it's just like, oh, the character gets a power up through stress or whatever, and that's it. You never see them train. And in Dragon Ball, is a lot of it's just like long training montages. Training to get better, to fight the villain, or to fight in the tournament, to buy time to train.
On that note, like, let's take JoJo's for instance, and let's take also earlier this season we did Fist of the North Star. So like those are combat shonen mangas, right? And there are protagonists that obviously are like martial arts masters, but they're usually like portrayed at, they don't have an arc, right? They don't necessarily, like Jotaro Kujo does not grow very much, right? There's not necessarily a long-standing form of that. And when they do battles, typically there's just some creative way to go around the battle. Whereas Toriyama really made the characters' growth and success based on their personal arcs, and sort of based it around character dynamics. There could still be gimmicks, like, say, the Ginyu Force and Ginyu switching bodies, but that was all within the story and how the story itself developed. And it made even a fight of the week feel very fresh.
I think Dragon Ball, I do believe, however, like Murph said, I think towards like its later stages, it got a little bit repetitive, especially when you have just like, oh, you have Cell, his main gimmick is he can regenerate, and you just have to like blast him off completely. And then you have Boo, who,
and they have multiple forms.
Yeah. And then you have Boo, who has the same, and then we go away from the more creative fights that you see in like the before Z era and towards like it doing like the Freezer saga, where you have, like you said, Ginyu, who can switch bodies, or you have like a Jace who's just super fast, and so on and so forth. And then you kind of go away with that, and now they're just monsters, absolute beasts. Now, that doesn't say Cell is still really cool. especially since how terrifying he is. But
yeah, I think there's a horror element to Cell that really works. And I also like the androids in that segment. I think Trunks is cool. All that stuff works. I think the series was clean by the end of Frieza Saga. Like, if you ended at Frieza Saga, everything would be in a perfect bow.
That's sad, though.
It's a lot messier after.
That's sad, though. I do appreciate the focus more on character growth afterwards. Like, I think, like, we still to this day, like, Vegeta's whole redemption arc from the asshole prince to, like, loving father who's still a bit of an asshole. That whole journey is so fantastic. Gohan, you know, how many children saw them.
Gohan in the Cell Saga really redeems it.
Yeah, exactly.
As a hero, yeah. Absolutely. One of my big problems with Z, secretly I'm a giant Dragon Ball guy. I love Dragon Ball. I think Z definitely starts to, with the power scaling, abandon a lot of the larger comedic tones and supporting cast. And they sort of just like stand on the sidelines. For that, I get a little like, oh man. But even then, like, they still pop and he still has love for them. So that all really works. I'm excited for like Sandland and like, you know, all this stuff to showcase. You know, by the way, this reminds me, so Dr. Slump, another project Akira Toriyama worked on, there's a PlayStation 1 game that was originally only in Japanese. Hilltop Works translated it in English and even did like a lot of retexture work for the translations. I would highly recommend that to anyone. Like, it is such a fun experience. And that property specifically influenced a lot from, like, even Mario's Tanuki suit, you know?
Oh, yeah, that game is fantastic. I played it a while back on an emulator. It is beautiful. Also, it looks fantastic.
It looks like Mega Man Legends, which is, like, one of the best PlayStation styles you could do aesthetically. It still looks great to this day.
Yeah, and then what else? You know, of course, we like Chrono Trigger is something you don't really need to talk about because it's the video game everyone loves, right? It's
Chrono Trigger is
made by
so
the
good.
Dream Team, you know, Hori, Sakaguchi, and then you have Toriyama doing the art for it. It is, yeah. What else has it say?
It's literally like the perfect design. Like it was like a perfect, you know, converging of scenarios and situations to make one of the best games. And I think the storytelling in it is really strong, especially for the era. You know, I say for the Super Nintendo, in my opinion, I know a lot of people fucking love Final Fantasy 3 or /6, you know what I'm saying? But personally for me, it's Chrono Trigger and Earthbound. Like, those are the ones where I am like, these are the fucking games to really, like, love for RPGs on the Super Nintendo. For me personally, at least.
I think there's nothing wrong with liking both of them. I think Chrono Trigger is definitely, like, one of these things that happens. It's like the mega game that, I don't know if there's anything comparable of, like, oh yeah, this is the Dream collab, right? This is, like, special occasion game. If you just want to have a good time, Chrono Trigger is the one to go for. If you haven't played it, you should. It should definitely be on your list of like games you should play once.
Yep. Absolutely.
I'm not sure if it's gonna like hit the same way for modern audiences now, like it did for like people your age or even my age. I played it when I was very young, and it still left an impression on me. It's just like how it's just left a impression on me, and like how big it was and fantastic. The switching timelines and I can't put it into words, honestly.
I think a lot of people get put off by older RPGs, but I think Chrono Trigger and Earthbound, like I said, but Chrono Trigger, let's talk about. I think it's forward thinking as an RPG in terms of mechanics. One day I will do a Chrono Trigger podcast, so I'm not going to go into a lot. But in terms of encounters and combat, especially, or the timeline scenarios, like all that stuff is very forward thinking and is engaging on some level. I don't necessarily think that a new audience would immediately fall in love with it, but I feel like it, with an open mind, I think anyone can still see what makes the game special. To talk about Dragon Ball, I mean, Dragon Ball, for games, like I was just talking with Bri. I think Bri and I are going to do a Legacy of Goku episode at some point with Murph. And like the Legacy of Goku games are fucking sick. The Budokai games are sick. In terms of fighting games, like Dragon Ball is some of the best shit. Dragon Ball Fighter Z is super fun and hectic. It's just so rewarding. And I even like the fucking like the story mode Goku games. Like all that shit is so much fun.
If you guys want to feel the Toriyama spirit in your life at the moment or looking for it, I recommend, even though people didn't like it that much, recommend seeking out Dragon Ball Kakarot. It is according to Gene Park of the Washington Post, it's the best Superman game ever made, and I agree with it. This game has, despite it being like a Bandai Namco license title, and we all know what that means, it is still such a cool experience to like live in this world of Dragon Ball and flying around and doing side quests and so on and so forth, hanging out with everyone. You should
and the
pick
DLCs,
it up.
I just wanted to say the DLCs for that game are fucking crazy.
Yeah.
And they're super cool. Like you've got like a Prince Vegeta segment, you've got a Dragon Ball tournament segment. Oh my gosh, they're just so much fun and so cool. Like all that stuff, like I totally agree with the Superman thing too. People say all the time like, oh, you can't make a Superman game, but Goku is a really good example of a character who is incredibly powerful but still has weaknesses and humanity to him. You know what I mean? Even if he's an alien from another planet, there's something innately personal to him, and through his trials he grows stronger every time. And that's just super fun.
So yeah, if you want to make a Superman game, give him a son and hang out and go fishing with him in the mountains.
Oh, dude, or like play fetch with Crypto.
Yes.
Oh my god. As if I could just throw a frisbee to my dog and like have it go over Mount Everest while Crypto picks up that'd be great.
Bro, the frisbee just breaks the wall, the sun wall.
Oh my gosh, that sounds like so much fun. All right, are you ready for the game of the week?
Yes. I'm stoked.
You've heard of it, haven't you? The legend of Sparta? When I was young, my father would tell me stories about it. Long ago, in ancient times, a demon rebelled against his own kind for the sake of the human race. With his sword, he shut the portal to the demonic realm and sealed the evil entities off from our human world. But since he was a demon himself, his power was also trapped on the other side. I never believed it. I thought it was just a child's fairy tale. But I discovered that this so-called legend wasn't a myth at all. Sparta existed. How do I know? Well, I met the sons of Sparta. Both of them. Though the same blood of their father flowed through their veins, the two battled each other fiercely like arch enemies. It seemed as if they derived some sort of twisted pleasure from this brotherly fighting. But in the end, only one was left standing.
Okay, this week's game of the week is Devil May Cry 3 Dante's Awakening. Devil May Cry 3 Dante's Awakening is a character action game made in 2005 by Capcom. It is a sequel to the acclaimed and pioneering Devil May Cry series. The first one served as a foundational game for modern action games. While 2 was perceived as a huge critical miss, 3 is a return to form, and while it wasn't made by Hideki Kamiya, who had long left Capcom, it was directed by accomplished designer Itsuno. Devil May Cry 3 is a prequel, when Dante is a young man first setting up his demon hunter shop. His evil twin brother Virgil has summoned a demon tower that connects Earth to the gates of hell, and Dante must stop him. The combat is smooth and fast, and probably the most notable addition to the formula is a style system, where Dante can map the circle button to a specific style. Trickster involves dashes and deft maneuvering. Swordmaster unlocks expanded movesets for your melee weapons. Gunslinger unlocks expanded movesets for your guns. And Royal Guard involves blocking and parrying to build up and dispense massive damage. There's plenty more to discuss and gush about. So, Laugh, tell me your thoughts on Devil May Cry 3.
It is, in my humble opinion, the gold standard of what an action game should be.
Okay.
I keep saying it whenever we talk action games. I keep saying Devil May Cry 3 is like the hurdle you need to jump over it. If you don't reach that level, you're not trying. And that's not, oh, every game needs a royal release or whatever, or style meter, or that action combat. It is just design-wise, so it gets so much right. Be it just the enemy selection is absolutely fantastic. Now, there's some bosses that I miss, obviously, but just the standard enemy lineup is fantastic. Every single one of them is uniquely designed. They all have their own way they move around. Their attack patterns are differently, and you have to employ different strategies to go up against them. Dante plays just fantastic, and there's like a reason why later iterations of Dante in other Devil May Cry games are like five action game characters slammed into one, right? Because it builds on that foundation. And just generally, it also tells a fantastic story. That's something that always kind of dies in that conversation on what makes this game so fantastic.
There's a lot to go over here. I think I will start by just sort of giving audience more context on why this being good is a big deal. So, like, Devil May Cry 1 is a foundational game. It is probably one of the first real good character action games. Kamiya did a great job with it, but it's limited. It's very repetitive. There's a lot of missed segments or segments that are bad. And in terms of movesets, weapons, and bosses, it's very limited. You could tell that it is a first entry. And you could tell that it is probing the genre. Devil May Cry 2 is a lot more slower and sluggish. It doesn't feel very good. The story is much more serious. The first game had much more of an action movie one-liner tone. Even the serious segments had melodramatic delivery. 2 still has melodrama, but in a mediocre way. There's still things I like about 2, but 2 is mostly a miss. And they also get things wrong regarding combos and damage, where, you know, the guns become the most valuable thing because they're a consistent source of damage rather than a combo fodder to maintain combo or juggle enemies. Devil May Cry 3 is able to sort of tie the bow and thread the needle in a way that is able to return to the fast-paced action, the stylistic design. It's a funny game, but is able to balance with serious moments. It leans further into the anime aspects. Dante is way goofier. Lady is much more like, I don't know, like every single choreographed scene's like wildly crazy, but they're so good. And in terms of the weapons, there's so much variety. Even when there's misses, you don't mind because in the next level, you're back to having a great time. You know what I'm saying? And like, I'm not gonna lie, I played this game so much that I was like, I don't need to play this. But last night I started up, and like within like 3 hours, I was on like chapter 10. And I was like, oh my god, this game's fucking. I was able to just beeline it and fucking have so much fun. And in the morning, I beat it. I was like, this is fucking great. It was such a fun experience to go through it again. And there's so many like elements that they draw from, like fighting games and like combos, and it's just so satisfying. Like the whiff punishing of Virgil. We'll get to like the Virgil boss fights much later, but like all of that stuff is so satisfying. And to really touch on the story things for me real quick, is it's not so much for the story that really drives home an impact, although that's super important. It's that the areas are memorable. Every single part is memorable. The dialogue works, the cutscenes work. I like how in the cutscenes, there's like, they have like a goofy little thing where they tell you the number of the mission you're on.
Oh, yeah. It's fantastic.
That is just so fucking fun. It's just a goofy ass game that executes everything it attempts well.
Honestly, I think, like you said, with Devil May Cry, I think the first game is Kamiya's attempt to make these like 2.5D just brawling games into a 3D game, right? Like your Streets of Rage, your Final Fights and whatever. And then you had Itsuno Subin, who's, of course, he's the master of fighting games. You know, he's Street Fighter over, Power Stone, fantastic. Best game ever made. I'm
just gonna ignore that one.
And rival schools, and suddenly, and then you see these like influences from fighting games like sweep in, and that's like how you unlock a lot of like why Dante plays the way he does. He plays like a fighting game character. He doesn't play like just an action dude. Suddenly, frame data is a thing that you look out for with punishing, as you mentioned, against the virtual fights. And that like extends to this entire combat system where suddenly every character and every enemy is designed like something you would go up against in a fighting game. And not just some mook you just style on. I mean, later on you can just style on them, but still.
Well, what's nice is also there's an escalating difficulty. I think the game has great pacing where you're always challenged. Like the moment you master one thing, it brings out something new, whether it be enemies or once you beat the game, there's difficulties. And it always escalates to where you're always mastering something and you're always humbled. Like, I could always do better. And that is such a cool thing for a single player game.
Are we going to talk about how they tried to mess with us with the initial release of that game?
Go ahead. I don't know where you're going with this. I have no idea where you're going with this.
So for those of you who aren't aware of this, the initial release of that...
Oh, is this the normal mode, easy mode thing?
Devil May Cry 3 was a little... Exactly. See, back then, people complained about Devil May Cry 2 being a little bit too easy, right? So those cheeky guys at Capcom decided, hey, what if we just made easy mode normal and normal mode hard? And that's how you get this like legendary line in Devil May Cry 3 when you just start out on hard and you just get your ass kicked over and over again. Then you just get easy mode is no selectable. Have fun. Casual scrum. It's fantastic. I love it. That was also my introduction to that game.
Here, I could talk about some stuff. What I personally like about the bosses, so like you start the game immediately, you know, pumped up. You get to sandbag some motherfuckers. It's like the very default, like the two basic default enemy types. And then they start to iterate. And the first real check of the game is Cerberus as a boss. I think for most people, that easy mode offering was Cerberus. And honestly, like playing it now, I was like, oh, this game is like still telegraphs so much to you and is so clearly like the game still fundamentally works even when it's hard. Like the game's like, oh, like when I got hit, I was like, oh, I really fucked up. I know I fucked up, especially even on normal mode. Like it wasn't that bad. And then what I really like was as the fights go on, there's so many creative levels to them, and there's so many creative weapons. I love how Cerberus has a 3-pronged like nunchuck thing, and I like, you know, Agni and Rudra's elemental, you know, crowd control weapon, and you get a fucking electric guitar melee weapon that I don't really use very well, but I mean, it's there. It's good.
Just the cuts. It also started this trend of like Dante just fucking around with his weapons whenever he gets them. That's like something that you see in the later games as well. Just like, I love how like when Dante fights with these weapons, it's not a guy actually fighting monsters with them. It's a guy just fucking around and finding out, right? Yeah. He surfs on the enemies and just like spins around shooting his guns. He He does pole dancing and shit. It's amazing. I love him.
Devil May Cry 1 is its own identity. I think after 3, every single Devil May Cry game is so influenced by 3. You cannot escape 3. Like, for instance, the voice actors. The voice actors have become iconic in their roles. Like, might controls everything. Like, it's just, or like, now I'm motivated. Like, oh, those are like so much fucking fun. And they evoke so much for the characters. And also like regarding the style systems, I think the style system, this is a hot take possibly. I like the style systems here, and when they brought it over to the Switch, they made quick swap styles, and I did not like that because I felt like this game was particularly balanced around you devoting your time and experience grinding into one particular style, and maybe once in a while switching. Versus like, I could just switch them all on the fly, which is much more better for game feel and like showing off. I think Devil May Cry 5 needs it for Dante to be an interesting character, but like for 3, I think it works perfectly as it is.
I think for 3, it's just that it depends. Some of these styles kind of feel...
I think Quicksilver and Doppelganger are the big ones out. I didn't even mention them in the intro.
Yeah, I think also like something like, Trickster just gives you an air dash, or like multiple air dashes. And Royal Guard is just a block, right?
I don't know about.
And
continue.
I think those are things that I think should be in the core moveset, and then you should like be able to focus between, do I go more into the gun direction, or do I go more into Swordmaster and have more of my melee weapons? Do I want to extend my combos, or do I want my combos to be more powerful?
Because you're making a dichotomy there, but you don't realize that Trickster and Royal Guard are the other ends of a different dichotomy of, should I evade and move around, or should I stay where I am and block?
Yeah, that's why I'm proposing, why can't I just like choose between Swordmaster and Gunslinger and Trickster? You
can do
and
that. You choose the either ors.
Royal Guard. No. And then I get to pick two of them. That's what I mean.
Sure.
You get to pick two of them. That would be more fun.
Maybe, who knows?
Because I could imagine just doing royal guards and just shooting people and just like...
I think it's fine the way it is.
Beating attacks.
I politely disagree. Anyways, another thing I liked is, and this may be a hot take as well, I don't know your feelings on this, is I feel like a lot of action games are very eager to just put you in rooms with enemies. And obviously, like, enemy composition and like how their patterns work is important and super essential. But this game is also not afraid to have interesting set pieces, like the train, or like, for instance, like there's an entire, there's most of a level where you're always in devil form and your health is draining. So like there's a lot of levels where there's a singular gimmick, and the gimmick is meant to give a little flavor and separate experience aside from the core experience. And I think that stuff is super fun. And I like how the puzzles and environments work. I found that this time around, like, the environments just, like, I remembered them. I just remembered them completely. Meanwhile, I don't think I could remember anything from fucking Devil May Cry 5. I don't think I can remember much from Devil May Cry 1. I think I can remember quite a bit from 4, but 4 is also pretty good because it forces you to go through the same areas twice in a single playthrough. So that may just be what, happens there.
Referee is definitely visually more interesting and more varied because like every level or every 2 levels kind of have their own vibe around them. So they stick more in your mind, and like even the backtracking or something, there's like completely different thing of like, I'm just like making my way through the tower and figuring shit out, and then the next one is, I'm just gonna go all the way up now.
And I was worried going into this. I already knew the solutions, but I was like specifically looking for like whether or not they signposted answers or solutions. And the game is pretty direct about what you need to do. Or at the very least, if they're not direct about it, the area is so small and linear that if you're just fucking around, you'll find it eventually.
Just good game design, honestly. Just good game design. I mean, there's also like little blunders in there. Like there's the worm boss fight and the bigger worm boss fight, for example, which is just why.
I don't like the Jester boss fights.
I mean, they're alright because you can still just style on him.
Yeah, he is like a little bit of a punching bag. But I just play it and it's like, man, I don't. The vibes are weird. It feels very much like, oh well, we have these assets, we might as well, for the special edition, make an extra boss. Boss encounters, and in like for me it just doesn't pay off. I don't like the Jester that much in the story. Spoiler alert: Jester is Arkham, like the other side bad guy that becomes the big bad guy after Virgil's like, oh, I guess I'll team up with you, Dante, type thing. It's silly, but it's cool.
While we're talking about special edition, have you put many hours into playing Virgil in that game?
Yes, I have.
God, I love him so much. He fun to play.
Special edition has my favorite Virgil for multiple reasons. I think the primary one is that this is the only fucking game in the entire Pantheon where Virgil has a Nilo Angelo optional moveset. I don't know if you know this.
Because yes, the Sparta, right?
In if you choose the corrupt Virgil skin, you can turn into Nilo Angelo, and he has a separate moveset. Typically, Typically speaking, in later games after this, Marvel vs. Capcom, or even Devil May Cry 4 and 5, he'll turn into Sparta mode if he's corrupt Virgil or something. So, like, this is the only one that has a distinctly separate vibe to him in that. But otherwise, Virgil really feels great in this. I love how Virgil plays. I think he is great optional content. And like, I'm looking forward to just playing another route of him right after we get off this fucking podcast.
You should. Have you played the Switch release, by the way?
I have not, because of the reasons I stated. I was like, this is an impure game. I shall not.
Yeah, but the Switch release does have a couch co-op for Bloody Palace where you get to play Dante and Virgil together.
Did you know? This is some trivia. I have some trivia for the fans here. Did you know that was already a thing in the base game? On one level, it is the level when Dante and Virgil team up and you fight Arkham and you do the jackpot thing. It's that boss battle. The NPC PC player Virgil can be played by the second player. And also, if you're ever in doppelganger mode, you can play as the second player can play as the doppelganger.
Yeah, well, my brother and I found that out like years and years ago via like just reading it, probably on IGN or whatever. We would play Mission 19 over and over and over again just to like play as Dante and Virgil. Of course, I would play Virgil because Virgil's the cooler one of the twins, but
I disagree. Here's the thing about Virgil. I like Virgil, but he doesn't eat pizza. Dante eats pizza. That makes him cooler. Dante's correct. So much fun.
Dante is just fun.
Here's the thing about Dante is like in this trilogy, he is very different in every single fucking game. In the first game, he's sort of like cheesy smooth. I don't know how else to describe him.
Oh, that's a good term.
In 2, he's like stoic. And in 3, he's like a snot-nosed brat. I think my favorite line of his is after the Agni and Rudra boss fight. No, it's not. It's like the second time he sees Jester. And he puts a gun to Jester and he says, "I don't like anybody who talks more than I do." And I was just like, that is the Dante of this game. He is loud, mean, and funny, but he's also just goofy and doesn't take bullshit, but he also bullshits all the time. It's funny. It's just great.
Oh, my favorite scene is when he complains to Lady about being shot in the head and, not being aware of how weird that is, being shot in the head.
Oh my god.
Oh, and his banter with like Virgil is fantastic, especially since Virgil plays around with him instead of just being, "Hey, no, we must fight, we must battle." Now Virgil is in it. He's with him on that.
So the thing to appreciate about how Virgil functions in Devil May Cry 3 is, in terms of a story and in gameplay, he is the other player character. He is another protagonist in his own fucking world. And like, you know that moment immediately when he takes his own boss weapon, when he beats Beowulf and gets the gauntlets and does his own like move set. You're like, oh, this is another person. And when you play the boss battles with Virgil, you're dueling. And it is so cool. And that's when it becomes like a fighting game, especially when he goes Devil Trigger. When he goes Devil Trigger, you don't fucking do anything. You respect it. You fucking run away, because otherwise you're going to get your shit kicked in. And so then after that, you wait for him to make a mistake, and then you whiff punish. And like, even by Virgil 3 at mission 20, you don't have a lot of room for that. Like, you can't do crazy shit. You get your little combo in and you get the fuck out, because Virgil is your equal in this game.
That final battle is just going blow for blow with him, and that's how it should feel. And in general, it's just a lot of games will give you a rival to contest with. Like, even we talked before about like Final Fantasy 7, and oh yeah, you have Sephiroth who's your rival, right? But there's no game since, and there was no game before that does the rival as good as Devil May Cry 3. It is such a, even though it's like based on like this dorky Neo Angelo boss who was just kind of annoying in the first game, right?
Yeah.
Outside of like his introduction cutscene is really cool, where he just like comes out of the mirror, just like nods at Dante, and then yeah, we take this outside, bitch.
He's a bad boss. I'm just gonna say, I think all the bosses.
He's a bad boss, but he has a cool introduction. Also, Shadow is cool. Shadow is cool in Devil May Cry 1.
That's fair.
Shadow is cool.
Yeah. But anyways, here's the thing that I wanted to ask you about. How do you feel about Lady? Because we mentioned her earlier. Lady is pretty much like the female, I wouldn't say love interest, but kind of close. She's basically climbing the tower to kill her father Arkham and stop the demon converging or whatever. How do you feel about her as a character?
I think it's interesting how she, first of all, she takes no shit, right? From not just Dante, but from Virgil Neve, right? She takes no shit, and she's very much her own woman in that. And it's like, oh yeah, dude, strong female character who looks kind of sexy, yeah, cool. But she's also like, she's the emotional core of the story of the third game, as well as how well her arc reflects Dante's arc. It's just that Dante, even though like we don't talk about that a lot, but Dante's entire like story arc is very internalized. Like he doesn't talk about the conflict he feels where like, yeah, I'm going just to kill my brother, and I'm gonna shit on my father's legacy.
Yeah.
And all of that happens through Lady. It's all reflected through her, of her coming to terms with who she is, what she has to do, what she has to go through. And Dante sees all of that, and through that he kind of realizes, after they have this battle in the library, right, which is also a cool boss fight, by the way, he's like, yeah, okay, I can shoulder this burden for the both of us, and then we figure it out. And afterwards, if you're like a fan of Devil May Cry, you like these guys, they're not just, oh, she's the love interest and he's the cool guy. No, they're like friends who like went through something together in that on that day, and that's kind of like interesting. This whole dynamic, how that plays out later. Yeah,
I mean, okay, so there's a lot to say here. I think what's so nice about what you just said is that there is still an emotional arc to Dante. So like, as I was saying before, Dante's loud and brash and kind of an asshole in a young, rebellious guy way. Literally, his sword's named Rebellion in this game. And by the end of the game, after the Virgil fight and you kill your brother, he shows vulnerability for the first time, and that's Lady is the one to witness it and like pretty much dub the name of the game and and Dante's story, which is Devil May Cry. I think that is such a nice little narrative, like ending, like a nice resolution to all of it. And you see Dante, you're right, because Dante doesn't showcase his maturity, but by the end of it, when he's in tears, he's earned it, I think my one problem is with the later titles. I agree that I like that they are comrades first and sort of like, they talk shop about demon hunting and they're friends. And I like how Lady just comes in once in a while and is like, oh, by the way, there's this fucking thing you should do over here. You know what I mean? I like that. I think her design in the later games sort of betrays the emotional elements of this game. I think she's too... I don't know the word for it, especially by Devil May Cry 5. I think how she functions in Devil May Cry 5, I'm like, I don't know. I'm not feeling great about this.
Yeah, me neither. I think I wish they would have gotten like their own, like, she and Trish. I think they both deserve like their own like little special section or something. But then again, she's also in the few books and the manga. She's also in the anime, and that's expands a bit more on her role and so on. Yeah. With her design, I don't know. I loved her outfit in the 4th game. I think the one in the 6th in the 5th game is also fine. When she wears like the long like blouse shirt with the jacket on top.
Maybe I just think the later games are ugly. That's totally possible. I think the later games might be ugly.
That's fair.
So I don't know. But this game, it totally works. I mean, like, literally, like, if you ask me, I think this game should be in fucking museums. It is, I think, very close to a 10 out of 10 for me, if not that. Is it the most perfect fighting game system? No. Like, it's not the best in combat ever, period. But it is capital G great in everything. And I think that's what makes it really special and stand out.
I think, and I said this at the start of this is the like bar. If you're making an action game, or if you want to like look at action games, play Devil May Cry 3 and then learn the lessons from it, or like see what it does. And that's kind of that's what you need to compare it to, because it's, like I said, it's the gold standard. That's what we should treat it. This is not just me saying, oh, this is a good game, this is my favorite game, I want to like pimp it out. No, it's just such a milestone kind of title.
Yeah.
And it's kind of it's kind of sad to like see how little games have actually taken from it. Like, I see the new God of War games. I see the new like action combat games in general, like Spider-Man or The Witcher or something like that, and how much, just in terms of enemy design and just how fluid everything is, they don't get. And Devil May Cry 3 does it correctly. And that's like the thing. It just feels good to play.
It's so weird. Like, okay, so this is going to be its own section, I guess. No, here's the thing is I completely agree with you. I think when you look at the influences of modern games, they went for something less demanding. So let's take Spider-Man. I think Spider-Man's combat takes a lot from Arkham. And especially in the later Arkham games, it became very close to rhythm and basic, like, punch, counter when you see a counter. And if you're feeling, frisky, you could do these optional things. But otherwise, the baseline game is very basic. And maybe there'll be an enemy or two to keep you on your toes, but things aren't going to change a lot. And then the boss fight is going to be quick time events and, this or this or this. And to talk God of War, I think God of War is a really interesting game to dissect in contrast to Devil May Cry, because it was a contemporary at one point, right? So like, you look at the PS2 era and you look at those God of War games, the PS2 era God of War games had some influence by Devil May Cry, but it definitely wanted spectacle, and it wanted, like, I would compare it, the way I compare it is literally like if Devil May Cry 3 is a Street Fighter or another random, like, maybe anime action game or whatever, God of War was Mortal Kombat. And if that doesn't communicate to you what I mean, I guess I'm trying to say is that God of War did not care about game feel as much as what your eyes saw. And I think that carried through to the new era, and then much more influences on slow, sluggish. I don't want to necessarily say Souls-like combat, but dedicated animations and less of a smooth, fast, frantic game feel, and much more of a sluggish, weighty. There's weight to the new God of War. And I don't necessarily know if that pans out in contrast to Devil May Cry. I think the last, game that really stuck out to me personally was Metal Gear Rising. Although I hear great things about Neo. So I would understand that one as well.
How it comes down to me is what I value in like an action game or just in general in a combat system is responsiveness and consistency. And it's something what I noticed, for example, when I played through the new God of War games, is that how inconsistent your parry is and how it sometimes just doesn't work. It's stuff like, oh, there's an enemy off.
But continue. Yeah, continue.
Yeah, there's stuff like I'm getting attacked by one enemy and trying to parry him, and then there's another one off screen who's attacking me at the same time, and I can't see him.
Well, this goes to the camera. I mean, we could talk.
Yeah,
actually, that's. Go ahead.
No. But the point I'm trying to make here, it's very inconsistent, right? It's not the same as like I hit the Royal Guard thing there, and it's gonna like just have an area of effect thing where it's just gonna block any attack that's just coming at that point, right? And I'm not gonna get kicked out of my animation. The other thing is just responsiveness. At this point, animations have to be super fluid, and we can't have our characters skipping animations and go into like another animation all of a sudden because they do a different move. But then you have something like Devil May Cry 5 where they just made transitional animations for that. And it still works on 60 frames per second. It is super responsive.
Well, I mean, I don't necessarily think that alone. I can appreciate the idea of committing and not necessarily having to cancel. But that being said, I think a bigger example here to showcase how strong Devil May Cry's design is over, say, a modern God of War is camera. So camera, especially on the new God of War, is very closed in on Kratos. It's pretty much over the shoulder, and a lot of environments are going to be in the snow, in the white, and you'll have signifiers of color, like say Kratos' red paint or a monster in green or something. But let's take Dante in Devil May Cry 3. Devil May Cry 3 typically has fixed camera angles, which is unique even now. They've pretty much strayed away from fixed cameras, but I've been on record as pro fixed camera because it shows you the scope and size of the battlefield, and it shows you the angles you need to see. And Dante, in terms of color theory, pops in the gothic fields, or like, in the gothic towers and like the dark, dismal areas, the red and the white pop. I never doubt where Dante is on the screen, and I can always visibly see what he's fucking doing. And, the enemies, I can also visibly see their animations. They have very exaggerated movements, and it's not sluggish either. They can be fast if they want to, especially if they have their own devil trigger. So it's never ever a problem to recognize the consistency in Devil May Cry.
By the way, we forgot one thing to mention. One thing that is very different from the first game to the third game. It's the style meter. I think the style meter in Devil May Cry 3 onwards is the greatest like implementation of like a scoring system ever envisioned in these kinds of games. Just because the style meter doesn't just rank you on like how good you do and how much you don't get hit and you land all your attacks. No, it also rates you on variety. Suddenly you start doing different combo paths and try more weird shit doing these combos. And even though the style meter exists completely separately from the game, it's not even the most optimal way to do damage, right? The mental it does to you, seeing this like score go higher, suddenly you play very differently, suddenly you try out all the different things, you press different buttons. And as someone who plays fighting games a lot, right, this is the way how you stop people from just button mashing. Because suddenly you have like a goal to chase after, which is like not just playing well, but playing stylish. And that gets you to roleplay as the character you're playing. It is fantastic. It is supreme, as they say. What What else have we talked about? Oh, we could talk about. Have we talked about virtual?
Okay, so
Let's talk about the weapons first.
it depends on the weapon.
How
for
good
me.
are they?
My take on the weapons is they're all like the melee weapons are all great. I think I'm just bad at the guitar. And for the guns, hot take, I think the guns are kind of bad if it's not ebony and ivory and the shotgun. I think Nevin is like really bad. Kalina Ann's like okay for damage, but it's like so slow. I just don't use Kalina Ann.
I just love Ebony and Ivory, just the moves you can pull off of them. It's the surfing on the dude. It's Rainstorm is my favorite move ever in any game.
Mm-hmm.
Because it just looks cool. It's the like running up the wall and shooting the dudes.
Yeah, I don't know what I said. Nevin is the guitar. Artemis is the like tracking lock-on gun. That shit I don't use. I just don't use it. I just give up.
Yeah.
Honestly, the weapons I use are typically Rebellion, Cerberus, or Agni and Rudra. And I use Beowulf, but I usually save Beowulf for Virgil because Virgil only has 3 weapons and one of them is Beowulf.
Yeah, I usually stick to Rebellion just because it's fun to use, right? And it's like his signature weapon. And then I usually switch between either using Cerberus or the twin blades Agni and what's it called?
Rudra,
exactly. Yeah. But Fenrir is just Beowulf was just more fun. No, Cerberus. We need to talk about the right wolf dog here.
yeah.
Cerberus is just fun to use. And
Cerberus is so fun. It's such a good starting additional weapon because it sort of sets the tone. And in that cutscene, Dante rides a fucking rocket launcher like a surfboard. It's so fucking
cool.
silly.
It's so cool. Also, Cerberus is so good of a weapon they brought it back, and then they made it even cooler in 5.
Yeah, dude, 3 is so good.
It's such a good
I'm
game.
not gonna lie. I'm not crazy about 4 and 5. I think 5 is really interesting and plays really smooth, and I think 4 has a great foundation and a great combat system, but in terms of game design and level design and narrative, I think 3 is still the best.
I think 3 is definitely like as like the complete package. It's the best one. No, as like the entire experience is just fantastic. I think still in terms of just replayability, however, I think 4 and 5 I would rather go for, and especially just 5 because it just plays so fucking fantastic, and the characters are so much more fuller. Especially like just Dante feels like such a more complete character. Nero is such a fantastic character, even compared to his iteration in the 4th game, and V makes a nice addition to the entire thing.
For me personally, I think what makes 5 really cool is obviously they fleshed out Nero enough to where I feel like Nero is complete. I think Nero is the most complete now. I'm like, oh, thank God. Because I'm not going to lie. I think Nero was like a stumbling block for me in 4. Not necessarily that like it was like, oh, this is hard. But much more like, I don't know. He didn't pass the vibe check is I guess the way to say it. And in 5, giving him the different arms allowed him to have a variety and a strategy to him that gave him a separate layer of depth that I really enjoyed. And then V in 5 is kind of what I want in terms of what they should do going forward is experimenting with character types. And I love how he's like sort of a beast master and controls other creatures to fight. And it's a little clunky at times, especially when you start out. But I think V is super cool. Dante, again, like, to me, it's nothing that I hadn't felt before, especially playing 4. He feels a lot like 4. But even then, 5 feels so good. I can't help but love it, especially since 5 also incorporates so much extended media, like the anime, like the books. And also, this is my opinion. I don't know your take on this, but I feel like Devil May Cry 5 also took visual art direction inspiration from the reboot.
Oh, it definitely did. like just Nero's design is just
Yeah.
reboot Dante basically, and it just also sets them apart.
I was also thinking like the urban landscape, like the city. Like the city's a big one. Just elements like that just really pop with you know, how the reboot did it. Like obviously the reboot has problems, has big ass problems, but it had its own identity to it, which was really nice. And I think 5 was able to take all of Devil May Cry's past and sort of incorporate it into a great package. And I think 3 was such a great return to form that every Devil May Cry game moving forward looks to 3 as the Papa Bear.
I think 3 just symbolizes to me personally just the rise of Itsuno as just the undisputed goat of the action game genre. I mean, I talk about it all the time, as you can probably attest. Just like Itsuno is the guy when it comes to just making action games, or maybe games in general. I don't know. He is the man, and it's when I say Itsuno, I mean obviously not just the guy. I mean his entire team is the team, yeah. And you see it in everything they did afterwards, be it Devil May Cry 4, Dragon's Dogma, Devil May Cry 5, and now Dragon's Dogma 2, which, by the way, if you liked how V played in 5, there's the Trickster in Dragon's Dogma 2, apparently, which can, like, control enemies and then fight with them against others.
Sounds like fun. I'm super about it.
Sounds fucking fantastic.
I'm playing Dragon's Dogma 1 right now to prep, and I've been talking with Brendan about it, and it's pretty sick. I'm going to keep playing it, though. It's not ready for what you're playing just yet, but I agree. I think Itsuno is super talented, and Capcom in general. Capcom has such a fantastic track record. So, you know, it's funny, though, like, to look at the list, he was the replacement director on Devil May Cry 2, and I think that is so important to realize that Itsuno is not also just a great director, but he's also a director that learns, and he is able to improve, and he was able to take the mistakes of Devil May Cry 2 and make a great game after it.
Yeah, Devil May Cry 3 was the redemption arc, right?
Yes.
And
he totally redeemed himself.
Yeah. And just also the franchise, right? And I think he took something that Kamiya made cool, and he made it into so much more than what they made it initially. And I think, like, and I hate to say that because I don't want to, like, incite fights and everything, but I think Bayonetta doesn't really get what makes Devil May Cry 3 great. And that was kind of like when Bayonetta, the second and third game, got announced, I was kind of like, oh, these games are going to be cool because we now live in a Devil May Cry, post-Devil May Cry 4 world. These games are going to be cool, but they kind of didn't get it. And then Devil May Cry 5 came out, and they're like, this is the thing. This is the thing I want. This is the thing I need.
I mean, I think you're being unfair here because you're wondering why Kamiya is not making games like Itsuno. And obviously Kamiya didn't even make 2 or 3. He made 1.
Yeah.
I think Bayonetta plays like an evolution of 1.
Yeah.
And in that, I really do appreciate Bayonetta. Do I think Bayonetta's better than Devil May Cry 3? No, I don't. But I appreciate it as its own thing, and I definitely don't think Devil May Cry 3 needs to be what Bayonetta... Like, Bayonetta doesn't need Devil May Cry 3 to be its own thing. I think... and it should be noted, I don't think Kamiya likes Devil May Cry 3, like, at all. I'm pretty sure, like, looking at, like, his Twitter, I think he hates this game.
Yeah, I think he really hates it.
Yeah, so because, like, at the very least in the tweets I've seen of him, he goes, like, oh, these aren't the characters I made. These aren't, this isn't the type of style I like. So why would he borrow from 3, 4, or 5? Now, admittedly, 3, 4, or 5 are great fucking games and probably better than Bayonetta, but, like, I understand Kamiya's point of view. That's all I'm saying here.
Yeah, it's understandable that you want to do your own thing, but it's kind of, again, sad that you don't see these. I guess the lessons aren't learned by many others. which is what upsets me. And it's like, maybe it's just a taste thing of like, yeah, I just like what Itsuno cooks, and I want more of that dish specifically, but it's just like,
oh, totally.
The mechanical finesse that these games exude, everything like this team touches. I need more of that in the entire industry. I just need more of that.
Yeah, I think the way Kamiya does evolution is weird. So, like, you take, like, Beautiful Joe and, like, Wonderful 101. I think Wonderful 101 is a fantastic game. I'm not saying they're one-to-one evolutions here. I'm more so just giving an example of how weird Kamiya takes this approach. It's not refinement is a big thing. I think Itsuno does a lot of refinement to where things feel good. The way Brendan pitched Dragon's Dogma to me was, it's refined action combat in an RPG with complex relationships or like complex mechanics as you would get in a hardcore RPG. So that's really hard to do. And so Itsuno was able to flesh that and make it pop. I think, say, Kamiya is much more set piece driven. There's a lot more cutscenes, a lot more, I would say, artificial or aesthetic style. It's a different flavor, and I do think Itsuno's is probably on a deeper level, more rewarding, or at the very least, more appetizing, to use the dish metaphor.
I think the lessons we learn here is more developers need to play fighting games, or need to have developed fighting games. I think that's the key to good action games.
Yeah. I agree. Wow.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
I'm glad it took us an hour and 38 minutes to get to that.
Yeah. Can we just before we close it off, can we talk about Virgil? Can we dedicate a bit of time to the lad, Dan Southworth's masterpiece? This
oh my gosh,
prick, this asshole. He's so cool.
Dude. What I like about Virgil is, number one, he is visually super distinct from Dante, and on a singular glance, you can completely see the different characterization. Whereas Dante's bold and brash and red, Virgil is cool, calm, collected, and blue. And Dante just he throws his fucking broadsword around like fucking guts in Berserk. And Virgil finally uses his Yamato for precise strikes, and those evoke such great character differences, but you can see the brotherly rivalry there, and it's so cool. And yeah, he's a fucking asshole,
but he's so cool. Yeah, just like foolishness, Dante. Foolishness. I remember someone saying, like, just the way he's introduced, you fight this like weird like rave boss in the second mission, right? Mm-hmm. Which is a fairly difficult boss fight for like being like the first real boss. It's like your first real challenge. And then the cutscene is the boss scurries off and like reports to Virgil. Virgil just cuts it in half in like one move. Yeah. And that's how you introduce your rival character. And then you spend 8 missions or so, you don't really hear about him. You just climb up the town and you have the confrontation from the intro cinematic. It rains, you're on top of the tower, the moon hangs low. The siblings banter, but it's very dry and the tension builds and builds. And then they fight.
I have realized there is some shit we need to talk about. We have not talked about this game enough, Laugh. Fucked up.
Yeah.
Because there's multiple things to mention here. Number one, in that fight, after that fight is the first time you get Devil Trigger in the game. So Devil Trigger is like unlocked as a story beat for the character. And it's really interesting that Virgil's entire motivation in the game is power. And like he's like, oh, I'm in like on a surface level, it's like, oh, I'm evil, I need power. But knowing, I'm gonna be cringe in a second, knowing the lore of the games, they lost their parents and specifically their mother because of demons and what have you. And so Virgil's response is, I need to be as strong as possible to protect what I care about, which is me, because I'm Virgil and I'm the best. And Dante has a humanity to him, and that humanity grows throughout the game. And that's really, really sweet. And the thing we have not talked about, Laugh, is the motherfucking Devil Trigger designs.
Yeah, done by one of the SMT guys. I sadly cannot pronounce.
It is the Nocturne guy.
Yeah,
whoever
exactly.
that guy is. Because this was around the same time that Dante showed up in Nocturne. Yeah, it's an SMT developer. And I think that's one of the other reasons why this game visually stands out, is even though there's like realistic or semi-anime aspects to it, when Dante and Virgil go into Devil Trigger, their weapons and their demon designs pop so well. They're so visually distinct from everything else you see in the game.
Oh yeah, it is so fucking cool, especially just using them, and the way also the design changes depending on what weapon you use, right?
Wow. What a
Dude,
game.
What a game, yeah. I also want to talk about, just if we can swerve back to Virgil, because I think he's like the centerpiece of that game,
you love
right?
Virgil so much. You're like, I gotta keep talking
dude,
Virgil.
Just like these, you have 3 fights with him, right? And you have 3 fights with the same guy, but every single one of them is so distinct, right? The first battle is like you fight it, you're climbing up the hill, right? He's the first real test in that game. He really goes through the motions with you. He's tough on any difficulty. The second fight is like an evenly matched battle. You know, it's a good back and forth, especially since he now uses the Beowulf and like changes things up. And it's also cool, like he collects weapons the same way you did, right? He also learns new tricks.
I said this earlier, Laugh.
Yeah.
He's like the other player character.
Exactly.
He's like a true rival.
Yeah. And then the final battle is such a confrontation, such a nail biter, the epic. It is so, it's tough. It's a tough fight because Dante's having a tough fight against his own brother, and they fighting over this legacy which they can't agree on, what their father's legacy means to either of them and what it should be. And this fight is so fucking hard. I died so many times there, but damn, it feels good. It feels so fucking good.
I will say, I think the Arkham Blob fight is mid.
Yeah, but the moment is cool.
I think Arkham is like a weird villain.
He is, but it's also like kind of, I think, him turning into fake Sparta and then turning into the Blob is kind of like, just contrast the two brothers, right? Who both, in their own right, their search for power, or like virtual search for power, comes from like from a desire to, like, never feel weak again. Meanwhile, Arkham just lusts for the power for the sake of it, right?
Mm-hmm. And there's a cool, like, in the credits, obviously, I think if you kill 100 enemies with Lady and Dante, you get the secret cutscene where Virgil fights Mundus and obviously loses. Spoiler alert.
What?
That's super cool. I know. I'm sorry I spoiled that for you.
Damn.
Sorry.
Damn.
Oh, well.
Don't worry, children, he
Go
comes back. He comes back.
He does come back. It was so funny. Like, the entire time, like, leading up to Devil May Cry 5, I was like, Virgil's clearly coming back. But, like, they played it as such a mystery. They're like, oh, what's going to happen? I was like, this is, like, the plot. Like, I could just tell. I love all the Virgil memes. Virgil is the best. That's the thing. And I know why you like Virgil more, is because Virgil's so memey. He, like, just works for memes.
Yeah, exactly. He's a straight man, But him in combination with Dante, like the way they bounce off each other is just fantastic. Especially just like in the ending of in mission 19 and Devil May Cry 3, or like the ending of Devil May Cry 5. Just the jackpot moment, right? Remember what we used to say? And it's just, that's so cool. And if you had a brother or like a sibling, you try to imitate that. I need to know. I wasn't the only one who did that with my brother, and or like fucking airsoft guns.
Laugh. Where can we find you?
You can find me on the Twitters or like the X or no, we dead naming Twitter. I'm normally not back into dead naming, but we dead naming Twitter because fuck Elon Musk. I'm there on the Aloft Hell. You find me shit posting there occasionally. You find me writing guides and video game shit here and there. I might be doing something Devil May Cry adjacent, maybe something to do with Smack and Smogma or something like that very soon on IGN, so keep an eye out for that.
Jag and Jogma?
Yes, exactly, that. His second game is coming out. Might be doing something with that very soon. Otherwise, you might catch me here. Sometimes you catch me on Brian's Platformers podcast very occasionally.
Which I'm never on, but that's okay. Brian's coming on here. It's okay.
We campaign for you. We'll campaign for you to be on there, and then you can.
I appreciate it.
We can annoy Will together. So yeah. Thanks for having me. I love talking Devil May Cry. I hope I can come back someday and we talk about other fun video games. Maybe we can talk about Dragon's Dogma and how good it is and how good the other game will be. Maybe. I'm not sure.
All right. Well, we'll see what happens. We'll see. I'll have my people call your people.
Oh shit. I need to get people. I wish you good luck with finding Murph.